Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 237, cover dated early November 1988. And this cover is by guest artists Rick Leonardi and Terry Austin inking. And it's specifically dated the 10th of June 1988. So this was a summer storyline coming out in July of 1988, and it features Wolverine and Rogue on top of a train, and the caption, "All aboard the mutant train." So in this issue we learn a lot more about the mutant slave state of Genosha, but the issue opens with this particular splash, a Genoshan flyer being chased by magistrates here. Our creative team for this issue: Chris Claremont, writer as usual, Rick Leonardi, penciler, Terry Austin, inker, Tom Orzechowski, letterer, and Glynis Oliver, colorist. So at the end of the previous issue, Wolverine and Rogue, but Rogue taken over by the psyche of Carol Danvers, escaping from the Genoshan citadel in one of these flyers. So they're being hunted down and they're entering into Seychelles airspace, because we learn in this issue that Genosha is east of Africa, north of the Seychelles in its location in the Indian Ocean. So here we have Chief Magistrate Anderson and the Genegineer David Moreau dialoguing about the chase. And what we see here is it seems like Austin, on this page at least, didn't know that Anderson was female, so he's inked her as male. He's corrected Leonardi's art to make her look male. At least that's how it appears to me. It's even clearer in the black and white in the Essential Edition that he hasn't recognized what she is. So anyway, they continued the dialogue, and one of the magistrates leaps off his flyer onto the runaway one, and as he's opening it up, it explodes, and it turns out the flyer is empty. The Genoshans have discovered that these particular mutants are undetectable by technology, and that goes back to Roma's spell that she cast on the X-Men at the end of the Fall of the Mutants storyline. But it seems that Wolverine and Rogue have already ditched the flyer, and they set it up as a trap. So then the story continues with Anderson and Moreau dialoguing about the imperative to catch the two mutants, because they're worried they might be spies for foreign powers. And the Genegineer in particular is keen to protect the secrets of the Genoshan state. So if we continue over here, we have a nice little homage by Leonardi to Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns and the newscaster from Dark Knight Returns. It's her exactly, and she turns up again, homaged by Jim Lee in The Extinction Agenda as well. And what we learn on this page is very interesting. We learn on this page this government Ministry of Public Information broadcast about the history of Genosha, how it was used originally and for centuries as a haven for Indian Ocean corsairs or pirates, and rumoured to be the destination of one of Sinbad the Sailor's legendary voyages. How Hammer Bay is a natural anchorage on the west of the island, how the island is divided by the Ridgeback Mountains, which are rich in iron and which has been mined from the mountains and turned into premium steel with an absolute minimum of pollution. And this is because of the use of mutant slaves to remove the iron from the rock. And this infomercial is being listened to by none other than Wolverine, who's lost his powers in the previous issue when they were removed by Wipeout. And what's happening is, with the absence of his mutant healing factor, his body is breaking down. Later on we would learn that the idea was his body's rejecting the adamantium lacing of his bones. He's been poisoned. So he's really finding it hard to keep upright, And he witnesses also this Genoshan waste disposal remover who is bullied by these magistrates on the street, one of whom drops this piece of rubbish on the ground and makes him pick it up humiliatingly. And the mutate replies, "Do my work good, boss. You watch, you see, make you proud." So this really disgusts Wolverine, as he says there, "I'd rather make them bleed." Meanwhile, Rogue, but it's Carol Danvers who's in psychic control, turns up in this stunning outfit. Wolverine comments on it, but she says it's part of her tradecraft training. She wants anyone looking at her to remark the body, but not her face, and not be able to recognize the face. So we get a little bit in their dialogue again about their partnership in the past, where Wolverine is thinking here, this once it's an asset, Rogue's a dual personality, and she turned over operational control of her body to Carol. Ace, that's Wolverine's nickname for Carol Danvers, is a world-class agent and best of all of us, especially in this mess. She and I used to be a team. So this is Claremont setting up a backstory between Wolverine and Carol that is going to be explored a little bit in future issues as well. I'm thinking in particular of Wolverine when he's in Madripoor hallucinating Nick Fury and Carol. So Claremont had something in mind in relation to this backstory between Wolverine and Carol Danvers. So then it turns out that who's at the bar except the chief Genegineer's son, Philip, and he's getting cut off at the bar, and then he starts a fight with the magistrates. And this is because he's angry because his girlfriend has been taken to be transformed into a mutate, and her whole family arrested in the previous issue, which he witnessed. So Wolverine uses the opportunity to start a general brawl in the bar because he and Carol are in need of new magistrate IDs so that they can continue undercover wearing these magistrate uniforms. So they both grab various IDs and then they leave the bar surreptitiously. But they witness Philip being beaten out of the bar, and then the magistrates planning a trick, but a pretty wicked trick on him. So they witness it, and Wolverine decides, look, he wants to follow along. He knows that it's none of their business, but he wants Carol to chalk it up to curiosity and a hunch. So Carol agrees to tail the magistrates and the unconscious Philip. So it turns out that the magistrates put Philip into a mutate suit and bundle him aboard this mute train, it's called. And the mute train is powered by an enslaved mutant here, who is the power source and engine for the carriages. And what happens is, as the train is pulling out, Wolverine and Carol jump aboard the roof to follow it to its final destination. And there's shades, of course, of the use of cattle trains by the Nazis in Nazi Germany, shipping off Jews and others to the concentration camps for genocide. So here we have a scene set in the Citadel between Jenny Ransom and David Moreau, the Genegineer, where he treats her very avuncularly to begin with, where she even greets him as Uncle David. She and Philip were practically engaged, were going to be married, and he explains to her what's happening, that she has a latent mutant talent, and that it's her duty to go through the transmode process and be turned into a mutate and have her talent used in the service of the state. So this is, again, Claremont doing something he always does, which is humanizing and rounding out the villains, giving them psychologically credible motivations. Moreau is a believer in the politics of the Genoshan state. He truly believes it, and yet it's horrific what the consequences of it are. And we're going to see that in terms of what Wolverine and Carol witness aboard the mute train. So at the end of this chat with Jenny, Moreau calls in the guards to take Jenny away from his office for final processing. Then the scene switches to the Sonic's examination lab. And even though it's not made clear with any caption or anything, this is Madelyne Pryor, who has been put into one of these mutate suits rather, and we learn how these things function, that these suits are completely self-contained, totally reprocessing all bodily wastes, a marvel of engineering really, so they never come off. And then Madelyne asks, what about children? And the surgeon or technician replies, mutes don't have any in the traditional way. Genegineer extracts your genetic material, mixes and matches it with others to create the required biological synthesis. Babies are decanted right down the hole. So this is just horrifying extrapolation of this inhuman, post-human, transhuman, whatever term you want to use, attitude to human genetic potential, and extracting it and manufacturing baby mutants for future service in slave service to the Genoshan state. So this particular technician with a psychic talent uses it to get into Madelyne's head, and she warns him here, I'm warning you, leave me alone. So this is going to work out well for this guy. Meantime, the X-Men just arrive in Genosha. They've been sent there by Gateway, and they're met by a bunch of Genoshan magistrates here who fire on them. The X-Men fight back, Havok using his plasma blast there, and then Storm orders Psylocke to extract any information they might find useful from the magistrates and then wipe their minds of the encounter. So Dazzler is using her Dazzle Blast there, the X-Men are continuing to fight, and then Psylocke uses her power, but just as she's using it, she is knocked out by a powerful psychic blast, and it goes back to Madelyne in the Sonics lab in the Citadel, and it seems that everyone in the cell has been butchered, is dead after her defense against the psychic invasion by the technician. So the Genegineer arrives to see the bloody scene. Then we switch back to the X-Men who are wondering about Psylocke, and she explains that something that she says here, a psychic shockwave of unimaginable power. Heaven help anyone in close proximity to the source. Never sensed such ultimate terror or rage. Storm asks her, what was the source? Don't know. Shield it from me. And truthfully, Aurora, I'm not at all certain I want to find out. But find out they do in the upcoming Inferno storyline. So then we switch back to Wolverine and Rogue / Carol aboard the Mute train as it wends its way to its final destination. And they enter the train. Interesting scene here with Wolverine using his claw, his adamantium claw, to open the back door of the train. And without his mutant healing power, he's bleeding here. He needs to be bandaged up because, as he says himself, without his healing factor, the healing factor normally seals the wound opened by the claws as soon as it's made, but now he needs bandaging. So inside the carriage, they find these mutates huddled together in fear, cringing, as Wolverine notes, and they find Philip unconscious on this particular slab here. But the mutates are hostile to these magistrates. They seem to have some inkling that these ones are not as docile or as obedient as the ones we've seen previously in the comics. And they're about to attack Wolverine and Carol when a group of magistrates arrive. And then, quick thinking, Carol explains that they have tracked the Genegineer's son, Philip, to the carriage. That's why they're there. And this particular magistrate notes that it is Philip, and agrees then to take them to the destination of the train and to see about having Philip returned to Hammer Bay and his father. And then what we see in the background of the last page is the magistrates beating the mutates from that last carriage for their disobedience. This guy says, the magistrates represent the law. You don't ever raise your eyes to us, much less your hands. So Wolverine is carrying Philip to the Jeep. They're pulling out of the station, and Carol asks Wolverine, what's eating you? And he says, before I die, Ace, I'm going to make some changes here. By all I hold holy, I swear, I'm going to bring this flaming country down. And that's our setup for part 4 of this 4-part Genoshan storyline. As it says here, in 2 weeks' time, the conclusion, going to be a revolution. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please like the video. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.